Boker Tov. Today's Daf Yomi for Gimel Adar Sheni is dedicated for Yeshua for Am Yisrael, a Shmira for the Chayalim, a Tzala for the Shuliyim. We're going to start on Yudalad Amud Aleph around 10 lines from the top on 14a. It starts with Shmuel saying, "My time of the Rabbanan." What's the reason why the Rabbanan say that even though the contract is not written, saying that I'm guaranteeing this property, nevertheless, the person who comes to collect from the presumably purchaser or the borrower can collect from encumbered property, from property that there were liens upon. So the Rabbanan are of the position, says, explain Shmuel, by time the Rabbanan Savri, Achrayos Toa Soferhu. And nobody would be so foolish as to lend money without putting a lien or collateralizing it. So if the scribe did not include that, there's a guarantee or a lien on the property, it's obviously a mistake of the scribe, and so therefore you could still collect it. So Amalei Rava Bar Isi Rav Idi Bar Avin, Mi Amar Shmuel Hachi. He said, so Rava Bar Isi said to Rav Idi Bar Avin, does Shmuel really say this? Amar Shmuel taught Shevach v'Shefer v'Shibud Tzarech L'Malech. Does Shmuel really say that if the scribe doesn't include the guarantees in the contract, that it's obviously a mistake? But Shmuel himself taught that the scribe is supposed to ask before a property was sold and he draws up the contract, is there a guarantee on the increase? Meaning to say, if you come to seize the properties, do you also get the increase in value? And also, is there a guarantee on the property? Excuse me. And also, if we're going to be able to collect, if you're going to want to collect from me, will you collect also from the best of my property or from the least of my property? So he put this out there, which means to say that the scribe is supposed to ask before including it. So so we have two contradictory statements of Shmuel. The first one was that Shmuel said that if the guarantee was not included, it's obviously a mistake of the scribe. And now Shmuel's of the position that the scribe needs to ask before including it. It's not a sure thing that you're going to include a guarantee. So would we say that these are two different positions being recorded in the name of Shmuel? Mar says, no, that's not what's going on. Lo kasha. Kam b'shtar hava, d'lo yav inish zizi b'chti, kama mekach u'memkar. Ta'avid inish t'zah ben aro yoma. There's no, one refers to a sale. When a person sells something, let's say it the other way first. One refers to a loan. When a person borrows money, the borrower will put up collateral. There's a lien on the property. And that, we assume that even if the scribe didn't write it in, it's included. But where does the scribe need to ask? For a sale of a property. He's asking, is this property guaranteed by the seller? Because there, it's possible that a person might say, you know what? Don't guarantee it, I'll take the risk. And a person could expose himself because he wants to have the value of using the land even for a limited time, until such time as it gets seized, he'll buy it even for a day. It means to say he gets to use it in the meantime. Because this is a family matter. Avua bar Ihi purchased he purchased a second-story apartment from his sister. Also, but turns out his sister didn't have the right to sell it, so the creditor came to his sister. Then he came to Avua, and he seized the property from Avua bar Ihi. Also, Kamei to Mar Shmuel, so Avua bar Ihi wants to get his sister to pay him back the money. He goes to Shmuel, and Shmuel said, Amalei, Ksavalacha Achrayus. He says, So Shmuel says to him, did she write that she was guaranteeing the sale? Amar le lo. He said, no, she never wrote that. Amar le imkain zil shalma. He said, well, if she didn't guarantee it, basically pound sand, you're done. You've got no options here because she never guaranteed it because it was a sale and not a loan. So Avua says, he says, yeah, but you're the one. I came to your court. You said that the guarantee is assumed, and if it's not included, it's a mistake of the scribe. He says, yeah, when do I say that? By loans. But by sale, well, we don't say that. David inish to zabin aral yome, because by a sale, a person will buy it just for the day, meaning say he'll have exposure, he'll take the risks involved in purchasing this property. Amar Abaye, so now we say the following. Reuven she machar sado Shimon b'achrayis. So Reuven sold the field to Shimon with a guarantee. Baba chov de Reuven, and then Reuven's creditor comes along, the Qatar Flamine, and he says, listen, you had no right to sell that property. I'm going to take it back from Shimon. Dina hu da'azal Reuven mishtai dina ba'dei. The law is that Reuven can go. That's how Ritva, Rambam say that Reuven wants to go. He can get involved. And he could say and try to protect Shimon from Reuven's own creditor. The Rif says a different version. He says Reuven is required to go to court and litigate on behalf of Shimon, meaning to say that that's what the claim against me is incorrect. And the person who's making the claim against Reuven cannot say, I'm just trying to get my property back from Shimon. There's nothing to do with you. Now, Amar because Reuven could say, the mafkas mine alai didei other. No, he said, if you take it from Shimon, then it's my job to return it. So Reuven either can or has to get involved to try to protect Shimon. And Igad Amri, an alternative version of this, nami, even if this case, this property, Reuven sold to Shimon was without a guarantee. The Amar way, because and now the creditor against Reuven is coming to seize the property from Shimon. Reuven can still get involved because it says, he says, I don't want Shimon to have any complaints against me. And so therefore he still has a right to get involved. Hold on one second. Okay, so now, hold on one second. So now we're on the bottom of 14a. Let's say Reuven sold a field to Shimon without a guarantee. And then people came, and before Reuven sold the field to Shimon without the guarantee, then they started hearing rumors that this field that Shimon thinks he bought, really Reuven wasn't able to sell it. It's going to be seized. So even though they had come to an agreement, if Shimon hasn't made a formal proprietary act on it, on the top of 14b now, then Shimon can get out of the deal, even though he might have agreed or did like a semi-kinyan. But once he does the formal proprietary act, then Shimon can't get out of it. To Amar way, because Reuven can say to him, I sold to you without any guarantees. That this bag full of stones you accepted, meaning to say, I sold you a bag, you accepted it sight unseen. You accepted upon yourself the responsibility of purchasing this property. And so therefore, once you accepted it, you can't get back from it. At what point do we say that Shimon has acquired it? When has he done a proprietary act? When he walks along the border, when he fixes the borders of the field. Mika de Amri, an alternative version of this is Afil Bachrayas Nami, that even if he sold it to him with a guarantee, that now that he hears people talking about it, Shimon can't go to Reuben and say, "Give me back, I want to undo the deal," because Reuben can say, meaning to say, when they take you to court and they make you return it, then I'll pay you. But my guarantee doesn't say I'm going to have to undo the sale even before you lose the property. It's only once you lose the property that I'm going to have to guarantee it. In Mar, we learned Hamocher Sado Chavero. So let's say somebody sells a field to his friend. So let's say a person sells the field to his friend, and then he discovers that the field that he sold was not his. Meaning to say, Reuben sold the field to Shimon, and turns out it wasn't Reuben's to sell. Rav says, Yesh lo mos. Rav says, Reuben has to give back to Shimon the money that he got from him. If Shimon bought this field and put in $100,000 worth of improvements, he has to improve it. He has to, when Reuben returns the money to him, he also has to pay for the improvements. And Shmuel says, Mos yeshlo shevach imo. Shmuel says he has to give him back the money, but not for the improvements, because the reasoning of Shmuel is it wasn't his field to sell. So it turns out what Shimon gave to Reuben was just a loan. And now if Reuben is going to give him back the loan plus more money, it looks like he's giving him interest. And we know that that's prohibited. So Balmine me Ravuna, they asked from Ravuna, Pirish shevach mahu. Let's say Reuben says, I'm guaranteeing you not only to pay for the property, but also I would pay for the improvements that you put into it. So Gemara says, does he have to do that? So time in the Shmuel Mishum the parish shivcha is the reason why Shmuel says you don't pay for the improvements because he didn't specify it. And here he specified it. Dilma time in the Shmuel. Or do we say the reasoning of Shmuel is given hois like karka since he has no real estate, since it wasn't his land in the first place? Mirse karibis. Therefore, by paying more money for it, it looks like you're giving interest. So they asked this question from Rafuna and Amarei at first he said yes, then he said no, Varapia beyond. He wasn't sure. No, what's the answer? No, is a law like Rav who says you pay for the improvements, or like Shmuel who says you don't pay for the improvements? So Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Shmuel, Mos Yeshlo, Shevach Imo. So Rav Nachman rules like Shmuel, he says you pay him back for the money, but not for the improvements. And Afal Pi Shapiro Shlo Shevach, even though he specified the improvements. My timer. What's the reasoning of Shmuel? Says Rav Nachman. Keep it the karka ein lo. Since he didn't own any real estate, meaning to say Reuben had no right to sell him this real estate. Schar ma'osav omeid v'notel. So if he's basically going to be paying back for the improvements, it looks like it looks like under these circumstances he's basically giving Shimon money for the money that he was able to use, and that's the definition of interest. So Rav Nachman rules like Shmuel. So Eisvei Rava or Rav Nachman. So Rava challenges Rav Nachman from a Mishnah in Gittin, and the Mishnah in Gittin is talking about a case where a person is responsible to pay from his estate or from his property for the ongoing support of his wife and daughters, and there's a bond on that. The bond, coming before everything else in his marriage is he's required to support his wife and his daughters. But ein motziin, so let's say we have to go and seize property. So we're not allowed to seize property from somebody else. To pay for the consumption of fruits. We'll have to see what that means in the Gemara. And also, in order to pay for the value of the increase in real estate. So we don't seize for taking out for eating fruits or the increase in real estate, or mazon isha v'abanos, and we don't seize properties for the support of one's wife and children. And the reason is because that would affect commerce, and nobody would ever go into business because this is an unlimited fee. You don't know what it is, and Nobody would buy ever anything from anybody who's married if he says, well, this property could be seized if he runs out of money to pay for his wife's food, breakfast, and lunch. So therefore, you can't go out and take that from property that was encumbered because then the world won't function. But we see from here that if there was a lien on the property, then you can go and seize it. But you can seize it from the free and clear property. And one of the cases that you would be allowed to take out the property from is for shevach karkos, for the increase in the value. You can seize property, not from lien property, but from free and clear property for shevach karkos. My lab. So what is this case where it's the increase in the real estate? What's it referring to? Aren't we referring to a case bilokeach migazlan? So what's the scenario we're talking about? Are we talking about a case where you're purchasing a field from a robber? Isn't that the scenario that you purchased a field from the robber? And what happened, this is how Rashi explains it. After you purchased the field from the robber, the field went up in value. And now the person who was robbed comes to take back his field. So he can go back, the purchaser can go and collect the principal from the seller, even from the lien property. But the shevach, the increase, that he can only collect from free and clear property. So this is a direct contradiction to what Shmuel said. And so we see from here contradiction Shmuel. So the Gemara says, no, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a creditor. We're talking about a creditor, that the creditor wants to come and seize the money that he's owed. The guy had lent him $1 million. Now he wants to collect it. And so therefore, that he can only take, there he could for sure take from the improvement of the property, because that's real money. And so therefore, that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about from an absolute creditor. And so that's what's going on. You say the creditor can take the property from the improvements, can take the money he's owed from the improvements, but not from the property that was encumbered. And the Gemara says, but the problem with that is, even if you say we're talking about a creditor, how do we explain the first part of the Mishnah? The first clause says you're not allowed to take out property for the consumption of fruit. And what does that mean? The Gemara assumes that what we're talking about is that a field was seized from the purchaser when it was filled with fruits. And now, so we'll read the Rashi. The assumption is that this is referring to a field that they seized it from the purchaser while it was filled with fruits. And now the purchaser wants to come and take back the money from the seller. And then we're talking about a case where the creditor is taking it. If you want to say that that's the assumption, that it's not a case of a theft, but it's a case of a creditor, would the creditor really have the right to take from the purchaser the fruits that are completely grown and don't need the ground at all? Does the creditor really have the right to them? He doesn't. Does the creditor really have the right to seize those fruits? It can't be. The creditor can come and seize the improvements that were done to the ground. There was a lien on the improvements, but not on the fruits. So it can't be that we're talking about a creditor. El Pshita must be talking about that this case is begozov and nixel, that the case we're referring to is where somebody stole the property and then he sold it to the purchaser, and the purchaser consumed it, and the person who was robbed comes and collects the fruits that were stolen from him, or he grew them on his own, or what's talking about is that the purchaser grew these fruits on his own, and the person who was robbed could collect the value of the fruits because he says it was my land that you improved. And from the fact that the case of the fruits is talking about a case of where it's robbed, Sefer Nami goes over Nigzel, that the concluding case is also talking about a case where it was robbed. And we see from here that you could collect from the free and clear property from the increase in the shevach, from the increase in the property, and not like Shmuel in a case where it was stolen. So the Gemara says, no, that's not necessarily the assumption. Midday area, do you really want to say that that has to be the case, that just because the first case is not a creditor, also the second case is not a creditor? Hakadisa, hakadisa. No, the first case would be with the creditor, and the second case could be and the second case could be where he purchased it from a robber, and so therefore the and the second case could be where he purchased it from a borrower, and in that case, the creditor has the right to the shevach. So the Gemara says, but it can't be that that's the case. How can you say that the ratio of the Mishnah is talking about a case of fruits, is talking about the case where the land was stolen, and now the person who was robbed is coming to take back his real estate, and we're saying that he could take also the fruits? Is that really the case? Because the next part of the Mishnah that deals with the increase in the property is not referring to that. Because the Brisa that talks about this Mishnah says it's referring to another case. But Shevach Karkos, it says, and the Brisa comes to explain the Mishnah. The Brisa says, what does it mean when it says in the Mishnah that you could be motziin for the improvement in the property from the free and clear, but not from the mishubadim? What does that mean? Kate said, it refers to the following scenario. It says, if somebody stole a field from his friend, so Reuven stole the field from Shimon, and now we're taking away the field, and we have to see what that means. Kishu Gova, when the person who was robbed comes to collect it, Gova Sakara Minachas Mishubad, and he comes to collect the principal from even assets that were encumbered. V'shevach Gova Minachas Menechorin, but the shevach he does collect, but only from free and clear. Now, what's the scenario of this brisa? If you want to say like it says it literally, that the robber is going to collect the money, that he stole the field from his friend, and now somebody's collecting it, and now somebody seized it from him, and now he's going to collect. Well, obviously the robber doesn't have a right to anything. Gazel miman gabi. He stole it. He doesn't have a right to collect. So it must be that the scenario of the Brisa is, must be that the case is he stole the field from somebody else, and then he sold it, and then the field went up in value, and he put in improvements into it. And he stole the field, and he sold it, and the person who he sold it to increased it in value. And now the person who was robbed is coming to collect. And we're basically saying that this guy has the right to collect. The person who bought it can go receive the money back from the robber also for the shevach, not like Shmuel. So Rav Nachman says to Rabba, no, you speculated and edited the brisa. Amrlei lafti rutza coming to Ratz. Okay, you speculated and edited the brisa. Taretz nami balchov. So we could just say that this case is referring to a creditor, and so therefore that we're not referring to somebody who was robbed, we're referring to a creditor. And when the creditor comes to seize the property, he's going to seize it. He's obviously allowed to seize the improvements as well. Tashma. So now the Gemara is going to bring another question on Shmuel. Again, Shmuel's position is that the person who sold stolen property, when he pays back to the person who purchased it, he doesn't pay him back for the improvements. So we have the Mishnah. The Mishnah says another brisa that explains the Mishnah. So again, the same brisa. When he collects the principal, he collects it from the property that there was a lien on it. And the fruits he collects from the free and clear property. Now, what's the scenario? If you want to say it's exactly like it states, that the robber is coming to seize the property that he's owed. Well, Gazan Miman Gavi. The robber doesn't collect anything. So what must we be talking about here? that he stole property from somebody else, and he sold it to somebody else, and went up in value. And so we see from here that the person who is the purchaser of the stolen property can collect from the shevach. So we see from Shmuel. Oh wait, excuse me. This doesn't talk about the shell. This price is just referring to the payroads. And Shmuel's position is just like he can't collect the shevach, he shouldn't also be able to collect the payroads because it's also a form of interest. But here from this price, it's saying that he could collect the payroads. So no, here we're talking about a different scenario. This case is referring to Kigon Shegazo that he stole the field and the field was filled with fruits. And so that's why he's able to collect the fruits, because it was there when he purchased it. It wasn't an improvement in the property. And not only that, he depleted the fruits. And he ruined the property. And so now, in order for him to get back his value, he has to go and say, pay me back for the fruits also. So because he ruined the property. And so since the purchasers knew that they can go and collect it. When the person who was robbed comes to collect the fruits, when the person who was robbed comes to collect the fruits, you can only collect them from the free and clear property because the other property was encumbered. And so therefore, he had no way of knowing, the people who bought those properties had no way of knowing about the fruits. There was no sound to it. The Gemara explains a different way to understand this price. So Rabbi Rafuna says, this price is referring to a case where the robber himself was coming to collect the property. The person who was robbed is coming to collect the property from the robber. And the reason why he's making a claim for the value of the land and not the land itself is Kigon. We're talking about a scenario, that basically the mafia came and stole his property. The non-Jewish mafia came and stole his property. But Nigzo Ligvos Karen Gova Minachasam Shubadim. So if he wants to collect the principal, now he could collect even from the property that was liened, like any loan. But Nigzo Ligvos Payros. But if he wants to collect the fruits that he had on it, Gova Minachasam B'nei Chorin. That he can only collect from the free and clear property, because since it's like an oral loan, there's no way any purchasers from the robber would have known about the fruits to take that into account. Rava lo amar k'Rava Barafuna. Rava doesn't say like Rabba Barafuna that we're referring to the case of the mafia, because Harei Yotze mitachas yodo, because the Brisa says that we're going to take the property away from him. And how did it leave from him? Bedina Mashan implies by a court. Rav Barafuna lo amar karava. Rav Barafuna doesn't want to say we're talking about Rava, where the robber destroyed the property and he ate the fruits, because Harei Yotze mitachas yado ba'ina mashma means to say when it says he leaves his hand, it implies, meaning to say it applies through somebody else, and not that he just ruined it. Rav Ashi Amar L'Tzad and Katani. Rav Ashi gave a different approach to this. To these two prices, he says, Now, the first case is talking about a case where he stole the field and it was filled with fruits, and he ate the fruits and he sold the field. Karen, let's say the purchaser, and now the robber is coming back to take his property, seizes it, and the purchaser wants his money back. So if he's coming to collect the principal, he could collect that from the even the encumbered. But nigzal bos, but miperos, but let's say he wants to collect the fruits, that he can only collect from the free and clear property because of tikkun olam. Rav Barafuna, milval peh. So Rav Barafuna view this as an oral loan. Milval peh, that you can't collect from encumbered property. But so the Gemara is asking, how can they do it here? So the Gemara says, No, first what happened was they took him to court, so they had a judgment, and then he sold it. If that's the case, Yachos Peros Nami. Well, then he should also be allowed to collect the fruits. Gemara says, Kashama Bedin al Karen, V'lama Bedin al Peros. No, he went to court for the principal, but not for the fruits. Gemara says, my psaka. Why do we assume that that's what they're talking about? Some of the milsa kitava inish karna tava beresha. When a person goes to court, first he makes the claim for the principal and not for the fruits. All right, we'll stop here. A big shkoyach to everyone.